And right now it's time for that time when we have our special guest. Tonight's special guest is Ken Ring. Ken has an alternative way of looking at the weather and the ways of nature. Recently, an appearance on Campbell Live had the people of New Zealand either condemning Ken or supporting him. Now that the dust has settled, let's hear what Ken never got the chance to say. We welcome Ken Ring as our special guest on The Beat Goes On. Ken Ring.
Nice to see you again, Gerard.
Welcome to The Beat Goes On.
Thanks.
How can one man get into so much trouble by having an opinion?
You'd wonder, eh? It must be because I'm a threat to some people, and that really came as a shock to me. All of a sudden, I was some kind of a...
You were famous for more than 15 minutes, weren't you?
Well, I tried not to be. And in fact, I stayed out of the media from the 28th of February right till about 2 weeks ago, so that I wouldn't be labelled a publicity seeker. But that didn't stop them from making up stuff. I was supposed to be either hiding in Spain or in some secret location or seeking medical help or getting death threats. It was amazing what they made up about me. Yeah.
Well, Ken, good to have you back in circulation. And for some of our viewers who don't know who Ken Ring is, and that'll be pretty impossible at the moment, Ken, it all started one day. There you were, minding your own business. You had a wonderful little organisation with a website called Ken Ring's Predict Weather. And as you've always said, this is your opinion, you've observed certain patterns with the moon, the sun, the planets, gravity. For that one viewer in New Zealand who's not too sure on the Ken Ring method, could we have an explanation, please, sir?
Yeah, sure. I'll start off by saying that just about everything we learnt in school was wrong about the tides, because the big tide of the Earth is the Earth. There's this thing called the land tide. So what happens is the moon comes over every day. It's like a big magnet acting on a solid iron ball in the centre of the Earth called the inner core, which is 80% the size of the moon anyway. So it's like a moon acting on a moon, two magnets acting on each other, and they jostle. Well, when you get something jostling in the middle of the Earth, it puts a pressure on, and it can only go up. So we get from that, we get a daily land tide. The land goes up and down in New Zealand by 8 inches a day.
So the Earth lifts about 8 inches every time the moon crosses above.
Every day. It's called the land tide, and of course you can't see it because you've got nothing to compare it to. So when we get a king tide in the water, we also have a king tide going in the land as well. And that's what produces the earthquakes, is that if the moon is closer than normal, then it creates more stress. The land can't rise fast enough to get away from the stress, so it comes through as an earthquake, a big shudder.
Now this is all observable, as you say, and yet our friends at the universities and our friends on huge salaries that work for weather departments, they don't want to believe this, do they?
Well, they want to steer you away from the idea of tides, because then it becomes something predictable. That takes away their job, which is being able to tell you what's coming up. You know, if you could predict it, you don't need the experts. And this whole business of aftershocks and earthquakes, I mean, that's nonsense. They say things are aftershocks 3,000 years later, you know, which is a long time between drinks. You know, they can't be after. It's like waves at the sea. You don't say, well, this wave is a leftover from yesterday's high tide because it couldn't make it on time, so it's coming on today's high. It's not like that at all. Each one is a separate earthquake.
Then, so you're minding your own business, Ken, and you get this telephone call. Could you come on and talk to Mr. Campbell?
Well, what they said was 1,500 people from Christchurch have requested that you come on the program.
1,500 people from Christchurch requested that you went on Campbell Live.
That's right. Now, so, like, you know, I say to people, think about it. 1,500 people are not going to want someone to come on and cause them fear and anxiety. 1,500 people want information that they're not getting. And that's the premise that I thought I was going to go along and speak about. See, on the 14th of, well, it goes back to the 7.1 on the 4th of September. A couple of days after that, the head of GNS said that there wouldn't be another destructive one for 200 to 600 years. And I said, what? No, because I could see that the moon was coming closer and they were going to increase. And I put out a tweet about a week after the 7.1 saying, no, there'll be another one in 6 months. And anybody can go and look at my tweets and see that it's there.
Yes.
So on the 14th of February, I said in a week's time, there's going to be a big one, because that was going to be the next one in line. The moon's getting closer and closer and closer. Yeah. And of course that happened. Now, up till then, there'd been no loss of life. So everybody was there was no fuss. But suddenly, of course, there was that terrible thing on the 22nd, and people lost their lives.
So on Campbell Live, you get into there and you're feeling as though you're doing a good job for people. 1,500 people had requested that you come on Campbell Live. The next minute, it was like you were being hit by a sledgehammer.
Well, I was sitting in the green room and he was promoting it, and he said, and we're having Ken Ring on soon, the man who has terrified Christchurch and made them leave the city in thousands. Wait a minute, no. The earthquake has terrified people, not me. Yeah. I said, John, please stop saying that I'm terrified, because I'm doing no more than the Met Service or NIWA do when they warn about floods or cyclones or snow dumps coming. You know, I'm not causing fear and anxiety. I'm a long-range forecaster. That's my job, is to warn. And I said, please stop saying that. And he kind of didn't know where to look, and suddenly we were on, and of course he virtually attacked me.
And the rest is history.
Well, the rest is history, but I had sent his producer 4 or 5 links of similar studies. Well, you know, I haven't done a university-based study, but these were university-based studies linking the moon to the earthquakes, just to show it just wasn't my science. And not only did they say there is no science, you know, they said I'm all alone, and they didn't say they'd received anything. That made me quite mad, because they were from that point on lying, because I had sent them the science, and they were trying to make out that it was just my quirky kind of ideas, and that was most unfair.
Now, what was the reaction to the show? You left the studio that night, and the next minute, could you say that all hell broke loose for Ken Ring?
Well, it did, because TV3 got 2,000 comments on their Facebook page complaining about the fact that Campbell didn't let me speak. You know, I thought that I was going to be able to talk about the 14th of February tweet, where I said that something would be coming, a big one, in a week's time. They went right away from that. So the next morning, John Campbell rang me at 7:15 a.m. You know, you don't ring somebody, and you don't even ring your mother-in-law at that time. You know, and you know, it's rude. But he said he felt he should apologise, and I think he was reacting to all the negative flack on him. And I said, well, thanks for the phone call, John, but if you were truly apologetic, I think you would come on tonight's show and say that you lied to the nation when you said there was no science, because I had sent those links. And really, I'm not going to accept your apology unless I hear that, because he wanted me to come back on. And so I declined until then. And then over the next couple of days, the producers of his show came to see me, and TV1, to get me on close-up, and I refused, because I didn't want it held against me that I was publicity seeking.
Honestly, the last thing that you would have wanted to do would be just put fear and terror into the people of Christchurch. That would be the last thing.
Of course, it's
you're not sitting there every day saying, look, you get up this morning, how can I terrorise Christchurch today? You wouldn't have had that thought,
Why
would you?
would I want to do that? No,
Yeah.
of course.
In fact, you're the one that ended up being quite terrified about what people were going to do.
Well, yes, and the politicians piled in.
Oh, the politicians piled in, didn't
because
they?
I had said 20th of March would be the focus time. I had said on my website it would be another time for the history books, because the moon was, over those 12 days around the 20th of March, was the closest to Earth for 19 years and wouldn't be as close again until 2016. And whenever it comes close like that, there's an almighty big event. And of course that's the Japanese tsunami happened then. So that was really the one in that time frame. Now, Dr. Nick Smith and Sir Peter Gluckman, on the 20th, they said there won't be an earthquake today. And Dr. Smith said I should be made legally accountable for putting fear and anxiety out there, and that really frightened me because here was government sanction on free speech.
What happened was you thought there was going to be an event on the 20th. There could be an event on the 20th of March, and the country waited, and sure enough, there was an event around about, was it 5 p.m. that day?
Well, there was some 4-point-somethings around Twizel around lunchtime, and I had named lunchtime as a possible time, and then in the evening at about 9:47, I think it was, an earthquake happened. Now they say it was a 5.1 or 3. I have the screenshot that says it was an intensity 7, and that was on the GeoNet website. The intensity 7 equates to a 6 to 6.9 magnitude event. That got scaled right down
by the news media.
By the time it reached the media.
Yeah.
And they said, oh no, that's not Ken Ring's one, we were expecting that anyway. And well, that's not what they said on the 20th of March. Gluckman and Dr. Smith said there wouldn't be anything on the 20th of March.
Now what say, with all your skills that you've gathered over the years, that you can see a major event happening somewhere, be it Christchurch and you have now been effectively, with the ridicule and the lynch mob mentality, they've silenced you. Are you going to stand up and say, you know something's going to happen, and yet you're afraid to actually say, I think there could be a major event in this city on this particular day? How are you going to react? I mean, are you going to stay silent, or are you going to brave the ridicule and speak up?
Until things change, until Dr. Smith or Gluckman, Sir Peter Gluckman, stop saying that I should be accountable for causing fear and anxiety, whilst at the same time, I mean, Dr. Smith is the Minister of Global Warming, for goodness sake, and if that is not scaring future generations, I don't know what is.
That's the biggest scam in the world.
Of course. So until they stop saying that, I can't really go anywhere near the public domain in this.
So can I ask again, you're pretty certain, you're 98% is certain that some big event is going to happen in a city which could result in death, and yet you've been silenced. Will you speak up, or will you remain silent?
No, I'll remain silent, except for my support group, and until the environment changes where people can speak up. See,
is that a disservice to the New Zealand public?
Well, you'd think so. You see, in China and Japan and other places, they actually have systems in place where they evacuate people well beforehand, because there is a science there that's accepted, because they're very tied into the moon there, very tied into cycles, and so it's okay to speak, openly about this. But I believe I've got the smoking gun of the earthquake situation, but I can't say anything, basically.
Can they contact you to become part of your network so that you could let them know what you feel?
People do, and my email is ken@predictweather.com. I try and answer all emails if I can, and because there are so many people who don't know what to do, and all I'm really saying is be careful around certain dates.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go away from Christchurch. I'm saying just don't go into buildings that have cracks in them on certain dates.
Yeah. Look, Ken, it's been wonderful to see you again, and best of luck for the future, and let's see what happens, shall we?
Lovely, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ken.